Welcome to Working for Progress, a podcast that connects us through conversations about how we craft our working lives and make progress. Through open and thoughtful conversations, our podcast starts with simple pleasures, finishes in awe, and meanders through career journeys in between. This podcast is rooted in Tribe Porty, a community co-working space and creative hub filled with entrepreneurs, freelancers, charities, social enterprises, and SMEs. We believe in the power of connection, sharing stories that inspire, challenge, and celebrate the many ways we shape our working lives. Join us as we dive into the realities of work, purpose, and progress, one conversation at a time. Today we are joined by Andrea Fraser, a civil justice lawyer at Justice. Andrea's work sits at the vital intersection of human rights, public law, and civil justice. Andrea's commitment to justice extends far beyond the courtroom. In her personal time, she takes on intense physical challenges to raise both funds and awareness for critical issues. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Nice to be here.
Yes, good. So we're going to have a nice conversation around who you are, your working life, kind of that intersection of why you do what you do, but also work is not everything that we do. It's just part of who we are, isn't it? So we'll start out with a really simple one. Can you name your 5 simple pleasures?
Ooh, cold water swimming, big cliche. Bath, the crisps that you get from Root Down. I've got really amazing salt and vinegar ones. I'm just going to sound like a massive cliche, but a little sunset and being out in the hills somewhere, that's my Highland connection, I think. Being in nature, to summarise all of them, ideally with a brilliant beverage and some good crisps.
Nice. I've got a water, sea, salt theme maybe with you.
It's my Piscean nature.
I was going to say, I bet you're
100%.
Pisces.
The irony is I can't actually swim, so it's more of a floating, but as good as I can get.
I'm with you. I'm a floater as well. I could just float in water forever.
How many times in your life have you said that?
Yeah, we'll let that one go. I'm a floater. We'll just pause so we can chunk that bit out easily. We're going to start with your values. Could you name your 3 top values, or you can name more than that if you'd like?
I would say compassion, authenticity, and curiosity. And I would add to that actually bravery, but not on its own. So being bravely compassionate, being bravely authentic, being bravely curious. Yeah.
How does that inform the work you do or play out in the work that you do? What are you working on just now?
Yeah, so I think it's a big part of my work in terms of, being bravely compassionate to me, and I am a human rights lawyer. That means extending compassion to those who many members of the public might not agree are deserving of compassion. Being authentic is tied to being true to my own ethics, morals, beliefs in a world currently, I think, which is really challenging us and pushing us further and further away from personal accountability. And being bravely curious is asking about, what can I do? How can I influence change? And in terms of what I'm working on now, I am a human rights lawyer. I'm currently involved in challenging legislation in the UK, which affects quite fundamental rights, including the rights to protest, also the rights to fair trials, because I'm working on basically trying to mitigate proposals which essentially criminalise vulnerable young people and children who might be at risk of being groomed for extremism and terrorism. And in what I call my side hustle, I work on humanitarian aid projects. I manage a couple of aid projects in Gaza, and I'm currently working to establish a charity here in Scotland which will further that purpose. So yeah, watch this space.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot to be. I love that you call that a side hustle.
My side hustle, yeah. Mostly because it was never my intention. I kind of accidentally fell into that line of work, so that's why I call it my side hustle. Okay,
but you enjoy it, or you feel so drawn to the cause that you can't, you keep going?
It is, I think, essentially my two interests combined. So I use my skills as a human rights lawyer, but then probably tied to the fact I do have ADHD, I'm outcome focused, I'm impact driven, I'm driven by novelty and things looking different every day, and I get bored easily. And I have a lot of empathy. I can't sit still and just not do something when I see what I feel an injustice or somebody needing help. It actually means I can combine those 2 or 3 different identities in myself to create change and impact, which can every so often be overlooked by if you were just a lawyer, if you just worked in humanitarian aid, for example.
Do you feel that there's a thread that's existed in you always since you were a small child that kind of carries through you as a young person and what you do now in your work and who you are?
Absolutely. So, I got into law because I wanted to help people. And I think similar to many people who are on their legal journey, you start off thinking that you're going to be maybe a criminal, a prosecutor, because you think there's goodies and baddies in the world, or you think you're then going to be a defence lawyer. And I did work for a while when I was training in criminal defence. But for me, it was the same people I was seeing week in, week out, and I realised there was something much bigger that was wrong with the system that was perpetuating. And I don't see the world in a black and white way. There are so many grey areas. So I've moved on through various different areas of law, if you like, to end up where I have working as a human rights lawyer. But at the same time, again, coming back to this idea that I can't really sit still. I believe that every problem has a solution, be it some of the problems I've had to or put myself out there to strategize in the past has been things like, how do you've got 24 hours to find a home for 3,000 displaced Ukrainian children, where are they going to go? My personal favourite, how do you move an elephant in a war zone? How do you get into Gaza when there's a blockade on aid? And those are all problems which I found myself solving or trying to solve or bringing other people on board to try and solve. And I think that curiosity and desire to help, it's back to my values, compassion, curiosity, has absolutely run through every decision I've made, both in my kind of, day-to-day human rights lawyer, aid worker role, but also just as how I see myself being a member of a community. If you see somebody or something that you could bring joy to, you could help, you could support, it's that question, how do I help and how do I bring others to help?
So yeah, it made me think about 2 things. The first, that comment about bravery, and you said something about things aren't black and white, and for me that's maybe what you mean by bravery, like understanding that everybody deserves compassion, deserves rights, no matter what they've done, what mistakes they've made. Is that what you meant by the kind of bravery piece? And does that keep you sane in the work that you do?
Absolutely. So, contrary to what you might see in the news about human rights lawyers, including some quite well-known people who spent previous years working as human rights lawyers, to be a human rights lawyer to me is about the undeniable, unconditional, unwavering belief that regardless of what you go on to do in your life, by the very nature of you being born as a human being, I also extend some of this to animals, but that's a separate discussion because of my compassion for animals, you are entitled to certain intrinsic rights which cannot be removed from you, and there's nothing you can do in your life that removes those rights from you. And it's becoming increasingly in today's world, that in itself is quite a brave statement, because we can all turn on the TV and over the years as well, identify certain people that you go, well, they're not even human because of what they've done. And it's hard to be compassionate. It requires a level of bravery to put yourself out there and extend compassion or support to those people. It can be hard to stand up in court or in a different setting and defend the rights of those who on a personal level you find repulsive in every way, but they're still a human, and we are all equal at the moment we are born as humans. We might go on to do things which, lessen the extent of rights. I think there's also a common misconception that when you talk about human rights, you're talking about people's rights to what seem like quite... There's always an argument that comes up about prisons, for example. Oh, should people in prisons get Nintendos? That isn't a human rights argument. It can boil down far down the line to human rights, in that does the person who's being detained have a right to be detained in such a way that doesn't cause them physical and mental distress to the amount it could lead to torture, for example, because there is an intrinsic right not to be tortured. So there's a lot of confusion, but in a long way of answering your question, yes, I think when I say bravery, I mean bravery in terms of extending compassion and standing firm on what your principles are. I also mean, when I say brave, curiosity. I think if I look at my whole career, including my work in humanitarian aid, yes, I mean, I often have to go into dangerous places to kind of audit the projects I'm managing, including in Gaza last year. And obviously, we can all see from the news, Gaza is a very dangerous place. So yes, my work can involve physical risks, but I think I have accidentally ended up working in the aid world, and it all started from being bravely curious about what I could do in any situation to help, and putting myself in rooms with people in rooms I didn't necessarily belong. I don't have a qualification in international development. I don't have a project management qualification. I'm not, or wasn't back then, a logistics expert. And being brave about putting yourself into places where you could embarrass yourself in front of very important people, but it boiling down to the question of, well, what can I do? And also being bravely curious about who you can ask to help you. I mean, I phoned up some pretty interesting, influential celebrity people in my life to basically put my ego aside and say, look, I'm trying to sort X, Y, and Z. Do you think you could help? And many people aren't in a position they want to put their ego on the line and have the phone hung up on, or be told that, what are you doing here? You don't know anything about this. And yeah, so long way of saying, I think bravery comes in many forms, but for me, it's about being brave at finding solutions and asking help of others to help the people that I ultimately want to help.
Yeah. Slightly changing gears.
Yeah.
Coming back to kind of you, what's your most random or hated job that you've ever done?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I've had a very interesting route to be where I am now, and I've had jobs from my first ever job. I was a strawberry picker, and I've been a wedding venue dresser. I had a fresh pasta company for a bit, but my worst ever job was when I accidentally, you're going to hear me say accidentally a lot because it's just the way I live my life. I was a skint student living in Glasgow. I had an internship coming up in a month in London, and I just really needed a job to see me through for a month. So I sat there and thought, okay, I don't want to go and get a job where they're going to really miss me when I'm gone. I feel bad about only wanting a job for a month because I'm not going to tell them when I go along for the job. So I decided I was going to be a delivery driver for a food takeaway place on Byres Road. It's quite a fancy establishment. Turned up on my first day. The chef hadn't turned up for work. I just had worked in hospitality, and I kind of said, I can go down and help if you want, because the kitchen was in a panic. Lo and behold, 24 hours later, chef hadn't turned up again, and for a month I spent my time working as a breakfast chef in this restaurant in Byres Road. Arguably, a chef is probably one of the most committed jobs you could take on, given the fact that I'd really wanted a job where I wasn't going to be missed. And so I can't look at poached eggs or avocado in the same way ever again. That was my work. Kudos to anyone who works as a chef. But yeah, that was my worst job.
Oh, at least it was for a month, I guess. But you managed.
Absolutely.
I'm getting the sense you are a woman that can thrive in anything that gets thrown at you.
Thrive brave is a relative term, but I'll have a good go at anything that gets thrown at me. Yeah.
On the same vein, what's the kind of biggest risk you've ever taken, personally or at work?
Again, probably biggest risk is obviously in my humanitarian aid work, as I've said, there are physical risks. You go into a dangerous environment. In Gaza, the way the rotations work, you go in, you don't know when you're going to get out. So obviously there's physical dangers, but I also, in addition to my aid work, I'm a lawyer. So I went into Gaza not knowing if my employer was ever going to get me back or when they'd get me back. In my professional life, biggest risk I've taken is simply being very willing to humble myself. Again, to put myself out there, to ask for help and to think creatively out of the box, and also being willing to being shot down, because I don't come from a long career working in your kind of normal route to working in humanitarian aid, because I am not a die-hard lawyer. What I mean by that is I didn't get into law because I knew I wanted to be a lawyer and I watched Legally Blonde and that's all I wanted. I've always just been really interested in people. I've been really interested in life, and I think I'm just not the most I'm often not the most conventional thinker around a table. And on the one hand, that can be very freeing, but it sounds quite idealistic, but it's often not. Often that can bring with it a lot of criticism, a lot of pushback. And I think being brave at going, no, I believe in this and I really think I can make it work, and I really think I can bring others along to make it work. So no offence, but whether you want me to do it or not, I'm going to do it. And that is risky because it could go the other way. And with that also comes being able to apologise or admit you've got it wrong, because, it doesn't always work out.
Just listening to you speak, it sounds like you're a natural leader. And being in the space that you're working in, how do you feel about leaders that we see today? I know there's a lot of leaders around the world, but there seems to be an overall general feeling that we don't have great leaders.
I think we don't have great leaders because I think if you set out with the intention of being a leader, you're starting out from the wrong place. For what it's worth, I've never set out with the intention to lead teams, to manage, to be a manager. I've set out from a position of I really love working with people. It's such a cliche to say you're a team player, but I love people. That's what's influenced me in all of my work. And I'd like to think I've learned to be a very good listener. And I think the problem with many of our leaders, be it on a political level or otherwise, is they set out with the intention to become a leader, that they want to manage, they want to control, and it's a paradox. You can't be a leader then.
Focus on power. Yeah,
absolutely. It's a focus on power and not a focus on people. And being a leader is inseparable from the desire and the enjoyment of working with other people, because you get the best out of them, they get the best out of you. That's how you become a leader.
I feel like the gap has just gotten so big. So leaders initially started for that reason, wanting to make a change. You're not trying to control anyone, you're trying to create change. But now, and then they get noticed, but then now the getting noticed part seems to be the most important part rather than the actual reason for getting into that work.
Absolutely. And again, I think I sit at a cross section between two sectors where ego plays a massive part, and the amount of people I've known in both the humanitarian aid world and in the legal world who start out with all of those brilliant intentions, and rightly they get credit for what they do and they should get credit, but the amount of times I've seen people who are new to the profession have come up to me and said, I didn't realise this part was so toxic, or I didn't realise there was so much ego involved. And unfortunately, yes, because it can be addictive. Credit and what's the word? It's not acknowledgement, but it's very often that your certain types of legal work or certain types of aid work will get news coverage, it will get press coverage. And I think that recognition can become addictive if you become so far removed from your purpose and what it is that you're setting out to achieve. And luckily for me, I've always been very, very blessed to work with amazing people who I've seen ground themselves and ground other people. And I think having that group of people around you in any setting as a leader, that is quite often the biggest difference between whether someone becomes an effective or ineffective leader, and whether they let that kind of addictive desire for recognition and power overcome them. You need to have somebody around you who will sit you down, put you back in your place. You need that.
I agree.
To humble you.
Yeah. Working in such kind of intense situations, how do you keep yourself well? Do you have a practice around that, or is it your personality? Is it both? How do you cope with the work?
It's something I haven't always been very good at, and increasingly getting better at, but I have always had, not always paid too much attention to it, but I've always had quite a strong belief system. And I do believe that when you're at your most authentic self, when you can make it spiritual or scientific, when you're vibing at your highest energy, you attract in all the good stuff. And that is definitely true for me. And authenticity, being authentic for me, can only happen when I'm looking after myself, when I prioritize my well-being. And I can be a bit hyper focused on what's the next thing. Working in either aid or human rights, there's always somebody else to help, so it can be hard to switch off. But by stopping and going, I'll experience more success when I'm more grounded, when I'm more healthy, when I'm in the best place. Everything's going to flow and I can help more people. So looking after myself has become more and more important. And then the other thing, which I didn't coin, it was something I heard somebody say in Palestine, and I think it's so true, is joy is defiance. And so I will seek out opportunities to feel joy. And I think it's very important in the current world that we all do that and don't feel guilty about it.
Good advice. I think, especially as an activist, that's a really tough balance to hold, isn't it? Yeah. I think you're right. That joy is defiance, because otherwise you'll just get broken, and then you won't be able to do the work that you want to do to make the changes that you want to create.
Absolutely.
But I think that's easier said than done. So yeah. Maybe it changes over time too, with the amount of intensity or stints that you're doing at work, and then what that takes to kind of recover and restore after.
Yeah, and I've seen so many brilliant people burn out. I think I've seen so many incredible people burn out and really take the burden of constantly trying to be selfless. And it doesn't, in the end, it doesn't work. You have to be sustainable. And I think the fact that the comment that was made about joy being defiance, it came from a Palestinian person who are enduring immeasurable suffering. In a way, it gave me the green light to go, okay, I can use that. I can step back. I can feel joy. It would feel differently if it's something I just came up with myself. But yeah.
What's your version of success for yourself, and has that changed over time, kind of since the beginning of your working life? Do you think about it in those terms even?
I think I mentioned at some point earlier that I'm very driven by impact. So I think success for me is very impact led. What can I do? How can I help? How many animals I can help? How many people I can help? But more and more, success for me is how I feel when I'm doing the work. If I'm at a point where I am achieving impact, but in my personal life is in complete disarray, and I am stressed and I'm tired and I'm irritable and the people around me aren't getting the very best version of me, I would actually say now, didn't always, I would now say that isn't success for me. Success is when I am achieving more of a balance where I feel authentically me and I am managing to have an impact, and there is more balance. That is what success is.
Yes. You know, it's really refreshing for me to hear you speak the way you do, because it feels like it's coming from such a deep place inside you. It doesn't feel like you've read a book on self-compassion and you're regurgitating information. It feels like this is something that you live and you believe in, and it's true, and it keeps you right, and it keeps you doing great things.
Absolutely. I mean, I have read books, but again, my ADHD means I very rarely finish them. So it's been a long process of connecting back to my intuition and my feelings, and learning to live with myself. There would be times years ago when I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I wasn't spending every waking minute trying to do more and help more people, kind of thing. But then, ironically, I became impossible to live with for people around me. It does come from a very deep, I would say, spiritual place where I genuinely believe that I am at my happiest, I am at my best when I am working, I say working, living really, to some extent, in the service of others. It's just that service to others doesn't mean disservice to myself anymore. And, you know, I've just thought of something else. You asked me what success looks like. I also have a belief, and this sounds very pretentious, but I'm going to say it anyway. I love the concept that your life is a book, and when you're there at the end of your days, if you can look back and say, God, that was a real page turner. I kept the reader guessing what was next, who was going to cameo in the next chapter. My life's never going to be, because I'm a bit neurospicy and everything else, I'm never going to have a big linear line that goes all the way through my life. And actually that's something I strive for. And that's what's probably opened up certain opportunities to me, because I go, oh, that would be interesting. I'll give that a go. Oh, it'd be cool to speak to that person. So that's what success is, making sure that my book at the end of my days is a page turner.
I love that.
Yeah.
And maybe there will be a book about you at some point.
Not so sure. I wouldn't sit still long enough for someone to be able to write it. But yeah.
Do you want to talk about that? So how do you relate to your ADHD, or how do you find ways to I don't want to say cope with it, I guess it's embrace it. I'm trying to find the language that's better.
Probably by not taking it too seriously. So I completely appreciate that everybody's different, and for some people the diagnosis brings with it a lot of struggle and suffering. I'm not undermining that it is very difficult to live with being neurospicy in a neurotypical world, but generally I try to make light of it, joke about it. You could use whatever word there and I wouldn't be offended by it, because we're all working it out. I only got my diagnosis as an adult, having gone through life. It's so obvious when you have that diagnosis. I never got into trouble at school, apart from, because I was very studious, apart from fidgeting, rocking on my chairs too much, accidentally tutting at my teacher, which I had no idea I used to do. And I remember this art project where this is the phrase I'd come out with, which was, and I'd written it down, I only found this piece of work years ago, which was, I had written, my brain is like a rave right now, colours, flashing colours everywhere and sparky things that don't connect. And if that is not the best definition of ADHD or neurospiciness, I don't know what is. But it got completely missed. But because it got missed, because, you know, I was successful, I was good at work, I got my exam, did well in my exams because I've got a bit of a photographic memory. I don't really feel like I can say I'm hugely disadvantaged by it, but I think also I am in a privileged position because I've managed to get to where I am, where I have a level of success that I can be more light-hearted about it. Again, I know other people who can't because they've never had those opportunities or that space to live authentically. So I prefer to look at it, for me, and it's only my personal experience, but it is intrinsically tied up to everything I've done in my career and life, because it is that curiosity, it is that maybe not always being the most self-aware, so putting myself out there, which in ways that are not always rational or logical. So for me, it is I mostly enjoy my ADHD.
Nice. I think that's a good way to talk about it.
Yeah.
We're just thinking about listeners. Last question. Tell me about a time where you experienced awe or you were in a state of flow.
So I think there's been a few occasions in my life where I felt a sense of flow, which is almost a kind of, for me, that means almost a spiritual feeling of I'm exactly where I need to be. And that's normally tied up to a situation where there's been a lot of self-determination involved. To give you an example, I remember a few years ago I worked in a job that I really didn't enjoy very much, and I used to walk to work every day, and I passed this green office on Hanover Street, and I used to say to myself, one day I'm going to work in there, one day I'm going to be a human rights lawyer and I'm going to be working in there. Lo and behold, my current job, it's based out of London. I had no idea, but my employer actually just so happens to have a hot desk in that building.
Wow.
And that to me was like, oh, wow, did I create that? Did I manifest that? But that was a real moment of, flow, I suppose. And there's been other times, again, usually in the context of where I've done things which maybe others have said that I wouldn't be able to do, or I could never achieve it. Sitting on the UN bus into Gaza, I had this profound feeling of, I am exactly where I felt, strangely, hard to explain, but I felt safe because I really felt almost divinely guided that this is just where I'm meant to be. There was this beautiful eagle that followed the bus the whole way along the 4-hour journey. And every time I looked out my window, I saw it. And I know, again, it sounds like I'm making this up and it's so cliched, but for me, that was I interpreted that as this is exactly, I'm safe and this is what I'm meant to be doing. I've had it also just stepping away from all the spiritual stuff. I think being in flow for me is when I feel the most just free. And I did a cycle a few years ago from Ukraine to Edinburgh. It was to raise money to do some fundraising. I did it by myself. Again, got all sorts of criticism. I was trolled online by professional cyclists and tourers because I put out there, I decided quite late on I was going to do this. I wouldn't have described myself as a cyclist before I did it. I just was like, I'm going to give this a go. I went onto an online forum to ask for some advice, and I got people were like, this has to be a joke. You can't do this. This is ridiculous. I mean, I got some really, really negative feedback. And anyway, I did it anyway. And my best moment was going back onto that forum, posting a photo of myself at the finish line and signing off by saying, P.S. I'm not a dude, because that's they all assumed, and the language they used was, oh, this dude's not serious, this guy can't be real. And it was my biggest kind of fingers up moment, and I was like, yeah. But that cycle for me was freeing, and I felt like I flowed all the way through it just because it was something I really just wanted to do for me as much as it's about raising money and doing something for the cause. It was really just for me, and that's when I feel at my most flow.
That is serious tenacity.
It's good.
That's amazing. Oh, thank you so much. It was really great to speak with you.
No, not at all. Thank you for the chat. It was fab.
To show your support, please like and subscribe to this podcast. If you'd like to learn more and stay connected to Tribe Porty and Working for Progress, please visit tribeporty.org. There you can subscribe to our newsletter and follow us on Instagram and Facebook, where we share monthly blogs offering insights into how we craft our working lives. This has been Working for Progress. We hope you join us again.